It's funny. I was getting messages like, "Are you guys live yet?"
I know. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we are here and we're ready. With me today is Anthony Campolo. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm someone who am a budding developer advocate, developer educator myself, and your work has been like such a huge inspiration to me. So it's really great to be here.
Thank you so much. That's my warm fuzzy for the day. So now that we're done battling the computers and we are live, we're ready, we're talking to everybody. I'm going to send a tweet that I meant to send out a while ago. Let's see, might just be the trick. HTTPS twitch.tv jlangsdorf. So my computer just rebelled and it wouldn't cooperate at all. It wouldn't stream. It was just yelling at me. It was being rude. It hurt my feelings. But we are up and running now, and I am just plain thrilled about it. So let's see, AJC Web Dev, which y'all should be following.
It's the one.
Okay, tweeting. It has been twote. Now,
quoted.
Chat, thank you for hanging out with us. Appreciate y'all spending time. So, Anthony, for those of us who are not familiar with your work, as you said, you are a budding web developer or a dev advocate. What's your background? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm someone who came through the non-traditional background.
Okay.
I was originally a music teacher. That's partly why I really resonated with your story. Someone who came up in touring bands and worked on your band's website and all that stuff was like, I did all that. I did, a cross-country, 22 state tour back in the day. So I lived that whole life. And then I spent a couple of years running a performing arts summer camp. So It was a camp that I went to myself as a camper, and it started as a theater camp, and then they added rock band and film and all these other things. So it was a general performing arts summer camp. And that was really incredible. I learned a lot about just operations and logistics and admin work and how to run events. And it was great, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Sure.
So I eventually kind of found my way to web development type stuff. I originally was interested in machine learning and was learning Python and TensorFlow and that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
Which is cool. And I'm still really passionate about, but it was hard to really make progress there. Whereas web dev, you can just start building stuff, throw up an HTML page and just see the results. And so a lot of people, have talked about the virtues of that kind of feedback loop. And I eventually joined Lambda School, studying full stack web development. And so I'm still currently in that program. I'm going through the computer science unit, which is kind of the final unit after all the web stuff. So I'm getting near the end of that.
Cool.
And I'm really passionate about Redwood JS. And I'm kind of here to talk about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So you mentioned before we started, hey, Chris, what's up? Thank you for the raid. Hello, everyone.
Good person to raid.
I see, I know Chris was doing Advent of Code, which if you haven't heard of Advent of Code, it is thank you, Chris, for the sub as well. Advent of Code is it's a challenge in the month of December with some code puzzles that'll help you kind of sharpen up. It's especially useful if you are trying to break into tech. Coding interviews can sometimes be algorithm challenges or things like that, and these questions are very similar to that. So it'll help you kind of think in that mode. So if you want to give that a shot, it is Advent of Code. That's the one. So feel free to go hit that. It's a good time. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for coming along for that raid. And you had mentioned before we started that it can take a second to get a project with Redwood initialized. So instead of doing what I usually do, which is talk about Redwood and then initialize a project, let's initialize and then we'll talk about it. So can you walk me through what my first step is if I want to create a new Redwood project?
Absolutely. Do you have Yarn? I'm assuming you do.
Yeah, I do.
Great. So the first thing will be yarn space create space and then Redwood dash app.
Like that?
And then space and then ./ and then you'll give like the name of your project. So you can call it whatever you want to call the project.
Let's call this one. What did I name this episode? Let's learn Redwood JS. Okay.
Yep. And so this will do the whole generation of the project. So usually it takes a couple minutes because there's quite a lot to do. It also installs your dependencies. And
so maybe what we can do to start is we can talk a little bit about what Redwood JS is. So I've heard the name, but I'll be honest, this is the first thing that I've ever done with Redwood JS. So I'm brand new to this as a technology. So what is it at kind of like the high level?
Yeah. So we say that Redwood JS is taking full stack to the Jamstack. And the kind of longer version of that is it's a full stack serverless framework for the Jamstack. So there's a lot of buzzwords there. Really, what I want to kind of get across is that it's a project with your front end, which is like a Create React app, and then also a back end, which is like Lambda functions, GraphQL type back end stuff. So it's about taking all these pieces of modern web development and the way people are wiring up their own kind of full stack projects and formalizing that with conventions. Okay.
And one way that I've heard this described, oh, that went so fast. Okay. I am installed. Wow. Okay. I was expecting that to take way longer. So
it took 66 seconds.
All right. So now that we're in here, I'm just going to open this up. Let's open it up over here, actually. There we go.
Yeah. So this is great. I find actually looking at a project is much easier than trying to just kind of like talk about it theoretically.
Yeah. 1 second. I got to get it in here so that it doesn't dim everything.
Yeah,
how about now?
And we'll probably be deploying this also. So
much better. Okay, so now we've got a project. I'm trying some new VS Code settings that I saw mentioned by, I think it was Burke Holland's idea, and then Nikki Muleman pointed me toward these of having the VS Code like file on the right, which still getting used to it, but I think I like it.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so now, if I look in here, I can see I've got an API folder, I've got a web folder. So let's look at the top level here. We've got our redwood.toml. Okay. We've got a README. READMEs are always great, but today you are my README. We've got GraphQL config, Babel config. An example N file. Now, I assume we're going to have to create a database, right? Like it doesn't do that for us.
Yeah. So the database question is an interesting one. The way it's set up and the way we'll probably do it today is you create a Heroku Postgres database and grab the environment variable and throw it into Netlify where your front end is deployed.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So, all right. So where should we start if we want to kind of pick this apart? Because what you said, it lands with me because I think that Jamstack has so much potential, and I think that there's a general perception at first, at least, that when you build a Jamstack site, that there are severe limitations on what you can do with it. But I think that as you dig further into that becomes less and less true. You can kind of do whatever you want with Jamstack sites because static assets don't necessarily mean static experiences. And so what Redwood is promising then is to take a lot of the question marks out because, getting from static assets to a highly dynamic experience with databases and serverless functions and all these things, there's some decisions to be made because, serverless functions, that's a whole mental model you have to build. Databases, you got to choose a service. You got to choose a database flavor. You got to figure out how to configure that. You got to decide how you're going to secure it and lock it down. All of those things that's cognitive overhead, right? And so what you're saying is that Redwood is trying to eliminate a lot of that decision-making process by giving us a ready-made, like, this is an app building framework that has made the decisions to give you a good shot of doing this the right way. Is that a safe assumption of how to frame that?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's, as we say, convention over configuration. We have, if you look at historically, we had really strong conventions around full stack development with things like Ruby on Rails. And then as single page JavaScript applications have become more of the main thing, we've gone away from a lot of those conventions. And this is trying to take everything we've learned over the last 5 years or so with things like React and GraphQL and these like new modern web paradigms and stitch those back together into conventions that make sense and that eliminate a lot of the decision fatigue and choices that go along with just how you set up your file structure, how you connect your front end to your back end, how everything speaks together. So yeah, it's trying to do that in a Jamstack paradigm by taking what we all like about the Jamstack and the benefits of the Jamstack in terms of performance, reliability, and security, and extend that to the entire stack.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. So I have a brand new project. So if I want to get this up and running, I assume this is is this already ready to serve? Can I just start it?
Yeah. So the first way you would get it going is the main command to start your dev server is yarn space RW, which is the alias for Redwood. You can either type Redwood or just RW, and then space, and then DEV or DEV dev.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is going to give us our main splash page, and then from there we'll just start generating pages, and that's kind of the first thing that we can get into. I find that just start kind of like building out the project like incrementally. You learn the different pieces and how they all fit together. If you try to like explain the whole thing, like there's an architectural diagram. If you go to the homepage real quick, the Redwood JS homepage, and scroll down, keep scrolling. Yeah, that thing right there.
Here.
Yeah, so that architectural diagram, that's a picture of like the whole project. I find that if you're someone who like likes architectural diagrams, that may be really useful. But it's like a lot to take in. It didn't really make sense to me until like I had already built like the whole thing, and then I went back and looked at that picture. I'm like, now it makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, this is what's always interesting about these is that this is just about any app is going to look pretty similar to this, whether it's built on Jamstack, on a traditional like LAMP stack. You're going to have, you've got your web bits. You have to deliver markup, CSS, and JavaScript to the browser. And then you have your kind of like API or dynamic layer where you're sending requests back to some kind of a server. So in this architecture, that's the front end back end split. I like this dotted line to kind of signify that.
As usual, I tell people to start with look at the left side, and that's like your actual directory structures when you're looking at your web folder and your API folder, and those are all contained in a mono repo.
Yeah. All right, so this all makes sense. I mean, I'm excited to see how it actually works, but in the abstract, I get where we're going. So now that I've got this site running, it's over here. We can see we've got Redwood Router. Okay, so that's a thing that we're gonna have to learn. But this looks pretty similar to like React Router or Reach Router if you've used those. So that's good. It feels familiar. So yeah, I guess like I saw it set up, it said a Prisma client. Does that mean that it also set up a database, or it just kind of set up an empty client to start?
Yeah, so right now it's like kind of initialized and set up to where you could get your database going really quickly. We haven't quite gotten to that point yet. We'll start off kind of in the front end generating some pages and routing those together, and then we'll get into like the Prisma database type stuff. But out of the box, like everything is like very much ready to go in terms of like it's already wired up for SQLite for like development, and then you just have to change like a single variable in one of the config files to make it for Postgres. But this kind of is getting ahead of where we are right now.
Sure. Okay.
So what we should do is you should keep your terminal running, and then we should get another terminal open so we can run commands to generate pages and stuff like that.
Cool. So I'll just keep this one running in the background. We'll use the VS Code one for everything else. So I'm ready.
Cool. So the first one, everything is going to have basically yarn Redwood or RW is going to be like the first kind of starting commands.
Okay.
And then for this one, it's either G or generate. So just the letter G is the aliaser for generate, and then page, and then space, and then all lowercase home, and then space and a /. So what this is going to do is this is going to create a home page for us, and it's going to create a route to our just main home page. So that's what the slash is for. That's what's going to generate the route. And the home is so it's going to name it's going to be like home page, going to be the name of our component, and it's going to be in a folder called home page, and it's going to generate a whole bunch of stuff. So that's the command. So go ahead and run that.
So to just repeat this back and make sure that I get it, we're using Yarn so that we don't have to globally install the Redwood CLI.
Correct.
Then now, and that's because it's installed in our package.json down here. And so when we have Redwood, then we can run this Redwood command. G is for generate. Page is the type of thing we're generating.
Yes.
Home is the name of it, and this is the path, like what we want it to be from the website URL.
Yep, you got it.
Got it. Makes sense. All right, so I'm running this command.
And it's also going to generate a couple other things as well. It's going to generate a storybook file and a test file. So it's set up in a way where you can run your storybook automatically. You don't have to configure storybook at all.
Nice.
And you don't have to like set up just tests. Like it gives you kind of like it sets you up for TDD out of the box, because like this kind of goes along with the Rails influence, is they're trying to bring some of the conventions around testing as well into these JavaScript frameworks.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I'm with you. So now that we've created this, we've got a home page, and so I'm going to open this up.
And then if you go back to where our project is running, it automatically jumps to that. So it gets rid of the splash page, and now this is our home page. This is our home route. And we'll have a routes folder to this. So this is the actual page we're looking at. And then if you look at the routes file, so this is your kind of whole route. And so part of why Tom built their own router is because he wanted a flat routing structure. You don't want nested routes. So your routing here is essentially every time you generate a route or generate a page, it automatically sets up your route.
Okay.
And this is kind of like one of the big things you get in contrast to something like Next, which also has its own router. So a lot of these frameworks, like the routing layer is like a really big piece.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm seeing in this some echoes of like the Angular style of setting things up, where what this does is we're using the CLI because there are connections throughout the file. So when you create a page, you have to create a home page, and then you also have to update the routes and potentially some other things as well. So the CLI is kind of making sure that everyone does everything the same way, and that's what you mean by convention over configuration. We know that things are predictable now, because in order to work, it has to be done according to this convention.
Yeah, and to answer the question in the chat, well, if we were generating 500 pages of your blog, when we do the scaffold command, each blog post gets its own page based on an auto-generated ID. So that's kind of the way that works. But honestly, the blog format is kind of like a good way to understand a Redwood project, but it's not really like the sweet spot for Redwood. It's more about creating like data intensive web applications with like multiple clients, and less so about like generating tons and tons of pages. But that is something you can kind of do with it. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. So now that I've got this homepage, we're set up here. That is cool. And it's already got a link, which is also nice. I do like that the examples kind of get done in place. I think that's a good way to this makes me happy to see that sort of stuff. But yeah. Hey, what's up, Peyton? Thank you for the host. Then what? What should we do next?
What I would usually do here is I would just kind of like edit this just to kind of make it a little clean, like give your own title, and and you can actually take out the link, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a layout that's going to wrap our pages, that's going to have our links for us in a nav bar.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the next thing we would do is we would basically do that previous command again, but now with about instead of home, and you don't have to specify a path at all, because it's going to create a path to about, and it's going to create an about page. It's going to do both of those.
Gotcha. Okay. Doing it.
And it also will generate the same kind of extra files and all that.
Okay.
And so if you go back to your project, you'll just want to type it in. Yep, you got it.
All right, that's intuitive. I get it.
Yeah. So this is a lot of the stuff you get for something like Next, where like you get very simple like page-based routing. Like you're just creating pages. Your pages are your routes. Like this to me is kind of like a no-brainer. But now what we're going to do is we're going to do the yarn redwood generate command, but instead of generating a page, we're going to generate a layout.
Okay.
And then call the layout just blog, all lowercase.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's going to show up in my layouts.
You got it.
Blog layout. Yep. All right. Yep. And
here,
okay.
So this will be a bit of typing here. So what we want to do is we want to import. So go up above your component and import, and then it's going to be link with an uppercase L, and you got it. And then comma, and then routes lowercase. Yep. And then that's going to be from @RedwoodJS/router.
Okay.
Yep.
And then here I'm going to let's do one of these, and we'll set this up with just some basic semantics, right? So we'll make this our main element, and then up above it we can do like a header, and we'll start I guess we can just do like a nav, and for each of these, oh wait, that's not what we want. We want the link. And so remind me what the syntax is here.
So it'll be TO equals and then brackets.
Like this?
Brackets, not quotes.
Brackets, not quotes. Okay.
So, not quite. So so brackets, not quotes. Inside the brackets, it's going to be routes.home and then parentheses after home.
Oh, interesting. So now I've got like dynamic.
It's a function.
Yeah.
It's a named route function is what we call them.
I like this because now what that means is that if I change the path, I don't have to go find everywhere in my app that has that path. Interesting. Okay. I'm into that. And then I'm going to set about and about. And what does Redwood say about styles? Like, what's its opinion here?
It's very unopinionated about styles in the sense that you can use style components, you can use Tailwind. There's like a Tailwind generator to configure Tailwind really quickly because like people love Tailwind. But you can just go into your index.css file and just style it naturally. Also, that's usually what I do because I'm not like a big CSS framework kind of guy.
Gotcha. But, so if we just set this up to be like
go nuts.
Okay, so we'll make this kind of obviously. We should probably go with a darker color than that. Let's just make it a dark gray. And then for our main, we will display block and max width, 50, or we'll go 90, width of 500, and probably don't want, that'll be fine. So that's good enough. But we're not using it yet. So how do I actually use this layout?
So what we want to do is you want to go to the page you want to use it in. So we'll put it into both of our pages. So you can start with home or either about, and then you're going to import it. So it's just a component, and it's import blog layout. Blog and layout are both capitalized. Yep. And then so you're not going to do any dashes or slashes, or there's no like relative routing of between paths. You're just going to do src/layouts/blog layout. You just give it the exact directory the thing you're importing is from, and then you don't do a .js or anything at the end. And then you're going to wrap it like that, and that should do it.
Okay. So we'll do the same thing here. All right, and aside from the fact that is atrocious. Let's fix that real quick. So we'll go up here and we'll do like a margin 0. We'll give this a color of white, and we'll give it some padding of like 2 rem. And how about that? Oh, but I need to make my links. How about that? Okay, that looks useful. And then we also want to add a little bit of spacing around these. So let's go display flex, and we'll do a gap of 1 rem. Beautiful.
Nice. This is something that's still a huge gap in my knowledge, being able to just like write CSS on the fly. We learned like CSS for like a week in our boot camp.
Okay, so now we've got like a pretty basic setup, right? Like I'm into it.
Yeah, all right, it's killer, right?
I'm gonna do one more thing, just to give us some. I have a shortcut to make that happen. So now we've got the default system fonts.
Just laugh in the chat. Someone's like, "Wait, why is this files on the right?"
I know. I've upset everyone. I'm sorry, Nate. Yeah, Nikki just linked to the tweet that shows the setup. But there's a really good reason for this, actually. I'll show you why. I like to toggle my files open and closed, and it doesn't bounce the code around anymore. So this is actually enough of a reason for me to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. I'm constantly opening and closing my thing on the left to try and get more space. And yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So it's like just those little things. Like I didn't even realize that my eyes were tracking that left and right until I wasn't doing it anymore. And I was like, oh, that's pleasant. I like that. Okay.
Cool. So what we've done so far is we have like generated our pages. We create a layout. We've routed them all together. Like this is really good stuff that you get from a front end framework like Gatsby or Next in terms of like having a sensible way to organize your right. front end. Now, here's where the really interesting stuff starts happening. So now we're going to start getting into Prisma.
Okay.
So we're going to want to go into our API folder now instead of our web folder. So this is now our backend, and we're going to have a DB folder. And in that DB folder, we have schema.prisma. So let's open that up. And so tell me again, have you used Prisma before?
I have used Prisma. I think it may have been the previous version, but
so Prisma 1. Yeah. So Prisma 1 and Prisma 2 are different. And this is confusing. GraphQL was the original, as Chris points out there. GraphQL was originally a backend as a service, and then Prisma 1 was a GraphQL server and thing that also would talk to a database. And Prisma 2, the Prisma we're now using now, is a agnostic tool towards GraphQL or API. It is simply a ORM query builder type thing.
Have they steered into ORM?
They call it an ORM. Yeah. Now they're calling it an ORM. They finally caved.
Good. I'm glad, because that's definitely what it is.
Yeah, it's an ORM. I would always say it's like, it's mapping your objects to relations. It's certainly not an ORM though.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with what an ORM is, it's just a tool that does this. So, yeah. So now I have, and let's pull up Prisma. It's prisma.io, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is Prisma if you want to check it out. And so Redwood is bundling Prisma as like a tool. So Redwood, and I think this is worth just kind of calling out again. I think we talked about it a little bit, but Redwood is not new technology. Redwood is an assembly of existing technology to help you make good choices quickly. I guess that's not entirely true, because like the router is new, but largely it's an assembly of existing technology: React, Prisma, Postgres, things like that.
Yeah, it's about taking all of the kind of best options that we have available. So they looked at a lot of different clients. So like they've looked at like Urkel maybe instead of like Apollo client, and they've looked at like different form libraries instead of like React hook form. So they kind of went through the process of like vetting all of the kind of React ecosystem and coming up with their own kind of conventions around it. And this is actually what's interesting is there's other frameworks like Blitz or Bison that are creating full stack frameworks around similar tools, but they may use like React Query instead of Apollo, or they may use Chakra instead of Tailwind. So there's a lot of different kind of assemblages of these different tools just because there's been such an explosion of all this stuff. And there's like a lot of really great, amazing technology, but it can be really hard to leverage it, especially for someone like me who's like fairly new and like having to learn GraphQL and AWS Lambdas and, you know, some ORM tool and like having to learn all those and put them together yourself. Right. Can just be daunting. Like you'll never get anywhere. So they're basically trying to give you the power of all these modern technologies in a way that is more accessible. For sure.
Okay. So now I went ahead and installed the Prisma VS Code extension so that this file would get syntax highlighting. It's a little easier to spot now. So up here, we're defining a data source. Then we have a generator, and then we have a model. Now, I can kind of figure out what this is. I'm assuming that the generator is the tool that we're going to use to build out like how we interact with the database. And then the model, I'm making an assumption, it looks like very similar to a GraphQL schema definition, but I can see that it's not exactly the same. Like there's some magic in here.
Yep, you pretty much got it. So it's, like you said, it's a model. So you're going to be defining essentially your fields and then what the type of your field is. And then you can do some other stuff like we have auto incrementing ID there. And you can set constraints like unique. And this is why, you know, we say it's an ORM. It's allowing you to just create like this JavaScript object. And so that's why it says Prisma Client JS, because you can create different clients in different languages. And that's like the thing that's translating your objects into your SQL. So we're gonna edit this, and then we're gonna run a command, and we can actually look at the SQL it generates. Oh, real quick though, I want to answer this question in the chat because this is something that is something I'm very interested in. Is Redwood JS for Vue? If it's a thing, if it will be a thing, it is. I don't think it is yet a thing. I absolutely think it will be a thing. I think if you look at the progression of these different libraries and frameworks. We have meta frameworks and we have like meta frameworks now, because you have something like Next is like 4 years old, whereas Blitz is like a year old, but it's building on top of Next. So I think there's going to be something like Blitz in Vue that's going to build on top of Nuxt. And it's basically, you just take Nuxt and slap an ORM on it. It's like, and bam, like you're half the way there, you know? So I think that it's kind of a question of how motivated you are to assemble the pieces yourself. And then once you've kind of done that, people can start to agree on what's the best way to do that. And then that gets formalized into a framework. Right. But it takes a long time. Like Redwood's been in development for like 2 years. Yeah.
And I mean, it like, so I feel like there are expansions and contractions of the ecosystem, right? For a long time, what we were seeing is that there were a lot of new JavaScript libraries focused on trying to create new functionality, right? And we saw this huge spread. And now what I'm seeing is that the libraries that are coming out are not so much about creating new technologies, but about organizing the thing. So we're almost seeing a contraction. We're moving down to a set of standards. And I suspect that we've got a little ways left before the next expansion. It kind of seems to be like a pyramid and then an inverted pyramid where we just go expand and then we contract and then we expand and then we contract. And you know, that pattern is, you know, we want to see what we can do. We get frustrated with the existing tools, so we build a bunch of new ways. And then we get frustrated because we can't decide what to use. And so we come up with conventions, and then we get frustrated with the conventions. And so we start all over again. And I kind of like this. This to me feels like curation. I think that curation is a really important part of building anything. And so what Redwood is doing is it's curating over creating. And for tools, I think that's the right way to go about it. Don't invent things if you don't have to, right? But yeah, so, okay. So to get off my soapbox and get back to writing some code, what should we do next here? So I'm assuming we're going to mess with the model.
Yes, we're going to rename it to just post instead of user example.
Post.
Because that's what we're going to be creating. We're going to be creating a post. You can leave the top line exactly the way it is, and then change email to title.
Okay.
and get rid of the unique constraint.
Okay.
And then change name to body. And then get rid of the question mark. Yeah. And then add one line, and it's going to be created at, one word with capital A for at. Yeah. And then date time, capital D and T. And then at default. And then now with parentheses at the end.
Nice. And I don't know if anybody was paying attention, but it just auto-suggested all of that. So if I were to do something like a slug, and then I can, I just hit control space and it pulled up my options. So I can like see what's in here. And then I can come out here and I can hit command space and it shows me my options here. So that's very cool. Like, and this is one of those things that I think is just a benefit of, I assume this is all written in TypeScript. So we get a ton of benefits through the tooling that way.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
so
it's amazing.
So now I've defined a post, and we know this is going to be like the ID or the primary key. We know that it's going to default to an auto incremented number. Perfect. The date time defaults to now. That makes sense. Title and body. I assume the question mark makes it optional, which is inverted from GraphQL, where you need an exclamation point to make it required. This looks like it's required by default. Is that correct?
That's funny. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what the question mark does, but I would assume, I think that is correct.
Yeah, I feel like I had a conversation with the Prisma team when they were doing this, and that was a decision that they made, was to make these fields required by default, and then if we wanted it to be optional, like an empty body, you could add a question mark to make it optional. If I'm wrong, please correct me, chat.
Yeah, so this is interesting because like Prisma is a huge chunk of Redwood, but you don't actually have to use Prisma. Like I've created projects with like FaunaDB, and you lose like all the nice kind of ORM-ness that you get from Prisma, but you don't like necessarily have to use it. It's not tightly coupled. I think it's strongly something like Active Record is with like Rails. Like, I don't think anyone would ever use Rails without Active Record, but that's not really the case. Like most people probably wouldn't use Redwood without Prisma, but I'm a weirdo, so I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I see. Well, and like Chef Brent is in the chat. Oh, what's up, Brent? Good to see you. And he's saying, I remember Rails, which that is kind of what this is, right? One of the things that people miss about JavaScript is the prescriptiveness and the like done for you-ness of Rails. I think that was what made Rails such a popular framing a development tool at the time, because Ruby is great. Ruby on Rails was like, you're so fast, you're done so quickly. And so, I've heard a lot of people independent of the Redwood community say they wish that there was like a Ruby on Rails for JavaScript. And it sounds like Redwood is attempting to fill that gap.
It is, and so is Blitz as well. I think it's really interesting to see the way they go about it, because Redwood is all in on GraphQL, whereas you don't use GraphQL in Blitz. You set up in a way where it's called like a no API layer. So you're doing RPC calls like directly into your backend, which is like more of a kind of monolithic idea. So I would compare Blitz a little bit more to a Ruby on Rails, but Redwood is going for the same convention over configuration thing. I find it just really interesting because it's also doing it in a way where it's trying to be Jamstacky and decoupled, and in a way where it's not like as tightly integrated. So it's trying to give you the Rails experience without the same drawbacks that people find in Rails in terms of it being like this really tightly coupled monolith.
Gotcha.
So this is why it's like there's this weird tension in terms of like how Railsy it is versus it isn't. It's very interesting.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm like going to fall into all these rabbit holes the whole time, but in the interest of actually getting something working, we should probably keep moving.
Totally.
I've got the post,
a lot of rabbit holes.
post defined here. And then you had mentioned we're going to use something else, right? Not SQLite.
For now, we're going to use SQLite. We're going to, because like you'd want to develop locally with your SQLite database. And then when you're ready to deploy, you can deploy to Postgres. And if you write all your SQL in a generic way, SQLite and Postgres should be compatible in terms of the SQL you write. So that's kind of the idea here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to enter a command. So these are going to be Prisma commands, although you're not really able to tell. It seems like a Redwood command, but we're going to do yarn rw and then db
and
then save. So this is going to, since we changed our schema.prisma, now it's going to create a migration with the post model that we just created.
Cool. So it prints out the whole data model, and then it says just created your migration. That's coming out from Prisma.
Yep,
shows us
you create
here's the migration
with another schema and a README, and the README will show you all the SQL that's generated.
Nice. Okay, so let's take a look at that actually, because that's very cool. So this, oh, nice. Okay, so it's just showing us what's being done and what our changes are. Yeah, I like that a lot. And that's cool because this is the sort of stuff that you want when you're doing database changes, but that a lot of times people don't do. So having this kind of record of what happened and when and what the changes specifically were.
Yeah, it eliminates a lot of room for error.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nice. Okay. So now that we've got this, are we done? Is it a blog?
Almost. We're very, very close. We're extremely close. We got 2 more commands.
Okay.
So yarn redwood db up instead of save.
Up.
So now that we generated the migration, this is actually going to apply the migration to our database. So now that SQL that we saw, those SQL commands are now being run. We now have a database with tables and all that kind of stuff. And the very last thing we need to do will be yarn redwood generate scaffold. So same as before, like we generated pages and layouts, where we're going to do scaffold and then do post.
Post.
Yep. So we're going to scaffold our post interface. And this is going to create a whole bunch of stuff. This is like the famous Rails scaffold command, where it kind of like, this is the blog. Is
it just did everything. Right, okay. So I'm closing this, going out here. We've got.
And let's not look at any of this yet. Let's go. Let's go into our back into our browser.
Here and here.
Yeah, and then go to /posts. And this should be fairly intuitive in terms of how you create a post. Pretty cool, right?
I'm gonna test it.
Ooh.
Wow.
This is done with Tailwind.
That is slick. Okay. And then I'm reloading the page. It's still there.
And if you can scroll, you can't really see because of how your CSS is set up, but you can scroll in that table to the right. So like inside the table.
Oh yeah. Show, edit, delete, show. There's my post. Okay.
And then if you look at your route right now, see how it's /1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is slick. That is really slick. I'm yeah. Okay. Color me impressed. Now, a lot of decisions were made here. Like I couldn't publish this, of course, because the chat would immediately troll the hell out of us by, entering new posts. But so this is all just the generated React component. So in here, we've got all of these kind of editing posts.
You hackers, you dirty
exactly
hackers.
Exactly that, you hackers. Okay. So yeah, all right. So where should I look? I'm kind of poking around, but show me what I should actually be looking at.
Yeah, this is a great question. So I wrote an entire blog post explaining all of this code. There's not really a good one place to kind of look at as the access point.
Where do I find that blog post?
So this is on that's kind of funny. I need to actually. So I have this very long blog series about Redwood JS called so just search a first look at Redwood JS. Yeah.
Hello, Brotas. Thank you for the host.
Yeah, so that's the community forum. And this is kind of like in flux right now. I'm in the process of like kind of redoing this. So this thing is actually like not really ready for prime time. It was like a month ago, but everything's kind of in flux right now. But it was part 4. So if you look at part 4, you see like it basically like I kind of just like explain each one and be like, all right, this is this. Mm-hmm. Here's like kind of the code. Here's what it's doing. So this is why I say like this like this isn't really touched on in the tutorial at all. Like it's kind of just there. You could poke around with it if you want. What we want to do next is we want to actually generate a cell that's going to do our data fetching for this.
Okay.
And then this is kind of going to help us understand. Yeah. So we're going to do generate cell, and then it'll be blog posts, capital B and capital P. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And then, so this is going to generate our cell. And so go ahead and run that command. And this will be in our components folder in our web folder.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so what's happening here, and let's see, are you getting an error? Because I'm not sure. You should be. But yeah, because what happens now is depending on how your tooling is set up, sometimes it'll suggest what GraphQL query you want to be writing. So let's just look at the cell and let me kind of explain what's going on here.
Sure.
So what's happening here is this is a kind of Redwood concept that is a declarative way to do your data fetching. So if you look at what's happening here, there's a query at the top. And if you've ever written a GraphQL query before, that should look totally like understandable. You're querying for your blog posts and you're asking for the ID of your blog posts. And then what happens is you have these 4 different states that your data can be in. It can either be loading, it can be empty, it can have an error, or it can be successful, in which case we are using json.stringify to render the blog post ID to the front page.
Right.
So what we want to do now is where it says blog posts, the 3 places, we want to just change that to posts, one word, all lowercase.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we're going to save that. And then we're going to go back to our home page and we're going to import this blog post cell.
Okay. What's the...
So you don't need to do the brackets. You're just going to import that whole component. So blog posts cell is what it's called. Yeah. Source components, blog post cell. Yeah.
Wait a minute. How does that work? Because there is no default export here. So is Redwood doing some magic to bundle all that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just works. All this just works.
Okay. And then do I just like drop it straight in?
Yep. Self-closing tag.
Interesting. That's
so you see what we're getting here.
Okay.
I know. This is where it all comes together.
I'm not gonna lie, that magic puts me a little bit on my back foot. Like, how do I don't know how to debug that. I don't know how to so you just have to know it's gonna run this query. These are the potential states it's gonna hit, but it's gonna build the component that shows the appropriate state.
So yeah, so basically anytime it is able to tell whether you're getting the error or whether you actually are getting a successful state, whether you have like a 200 or a 400 or anything like that. So yeah, this is why this framework took 2 years to build. Like
I get you.
This isn't
I understand.
Like they call it the magic. It's just people spending the time to like figure out how all this stuff works. But if you go to the query at top, so leave everything like that on the home page.
Where was I here?
Yeah, go back to your blog post cell and then bring it all in. So add title, body, created at, and then let's just see what that changes.
I wonder why it's not pulling that in for me. It feels like it should. I probably just need to configure something. But regardless, boom.
Yeah, so now we're getting everything. And what we can now do is we can style this, or not necessarily style, but we can turn it actually into a component. Yeah, exactly. Right there. So where it's returning, you can spit out like the article key equals post.id and then post.title, post.created at, post.body, and just kind of do all that.
So we'll do one of these and then we'll get like a key equals post.id, and we'll do a link, which means I need to import that, but it'll auto import it for me. Good. And then I'm going to, here's a question. How do I link to a post? Because it's not going to work with that routes thing.
there's a way to do this. I don't know how to do it offhand, like right now, but
Okay.
there's definitely like a very simple way to do this in terms of like setting your.
And I'm realizing now that we haven't actually built a post page. So how about I don't do that just yet? So I'm going to instead, we'll make an H2 with the post.title, and then we'll do a div, or it's just a single. That's just plain text, right? Okay, I'm going to set it as a paragraph. We'll do dangerously set inner HTML, and we'll make it the post.body. And then finally down here, we will say created at post.created at. Okay. Did I break it? I broke it.
Possibly. Yeah, so try getting rid of the dangerously set inner HTML part, and just do like a post body, regular post body. Try that.
Where's my error? No error.
So let's see. It might be the way we're mapping over the posts. So can I just shoot you some text and you can like copy paste it?
Yeah, send it to me as a Twitter DM though, because we're between two computers.
Yes.
And while you're doing that, I just realized I forgot to shout out the sponsors today. So let's do that really quickly. Today's show is being live captioned, as always, by White Coat Captioning. We've got Rachel in helping us out today. You can see that over at lwj.dev/live. And the captions are being provided by our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Sanity, and Auth0. Thank you to all of them for making this show more accessible to more people. So make sure you check that out. Again, it is lwj.dev/live. And we forgot to return this. No, we didn't.
Yeah, so
we forgot to return this. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, I knew we were making an error somewhere in the mapping.
Thank you, chat. Hey, look at it go. First try, right?
Viewers are so talented. Sorry, what was that?
Okay, so now we've got we're good. We've got that running. And if we go to posts and create a new one.
Buckets, did that just work?
Save that. Go back home. There we go.
So there's your blog.
That's nice. We've got a blog. So this is slick. We can see how quickly, setting this up with another service would have taken significantly longer than the 1 hour. Less than 1 hour, given that we've been screwing around and I took 10 minutes to get started. So, but 45 minutes worth of work, and we have a fully functioning blog with a database. And this doesn't. Not going to win design awards, but this is certainly functional, right? That's pretty impressive. I can see the appeal of this.
Yep. So the next place that we could go, probably where we're at now with time, we won't build out the contact form, but if you follow the tutorial, basically what happens is it walks you through creating a contact form that is like name, email, and a message, and you set some validation. And if you open your thing all the way, so you can kind of see the sidebar.
Oh, sidebar. Got it.
Yeah. So check on the left. We have done everything up to side quest, I think. So
okay.
Yeah, so then you have routing params, and that's where you can get into figuring out how to do your linking to your different pages that are created from your blog posts. And then you have everyone's favorite thing to build. We make lots of jokes about forms here. And so this will walk you through how to create a contact form. We use React Hook form as like the form layer underneath, because they decided it was the most form shaped of all the forms that were available.
Okay.
But I have no idea why they picked React Hook form. But that's like, you don't have to use it. You can just write straight HTML forms if you want to, but you get like a lot of nice error validation and stuff like that out of the box if you're using React Hook form.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, cool. So in the I think we've got about 30 minutes left, right? So what?
Yeah, that's plenty of time to deploy the front end and the back end.
Let's do it. I'm ready. So if I want to deploy, I'm assuming I need to stop this server. And now I have a bunch of code. Let's open it in VS Code. It's a little easier to see that way. So here I have all of this, and I can't get there we go. So this is everything here, and I can just start kind of adding certain things. So there are things that I know we need, like if I want to add my web folder, right?
Well,
and then
hold on.
Oh,
so there's just a command that you need to enter that's going to set up all your deploy.
come on, don't really.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right, Redwood. Now what?
Yarn redwood generate deploy netlify.
Okay.
It's going to create netlify.toml.
Okay.
So check that out.
Let's go up here. Netlify.toml.
And so it gives you your command, publishes to a dist, like very, very standard kind of like build that you're going to do on Netlify.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so now you're going to want to actually commit this and get this all into a repo, your whole project exactly the way it is right now.
And just all of it.
Actually, there's one more thing we got. Let's just do this now. Go to your schema.prisma.
Okay.
And this is where we have flip SQLite to Postgres.
Got it.
And then that should be all the configuration we need to do. Yeah, bingo, bango. Yeah,
bingo, bango, bongo. All right.
Yeah, so now just get that sucker up on a repo, get your Netlify connected to it, and you'll deploy it, and it'll have all your build commands there. And yeah, that should be fairly easy to do.
Okay.
Well, you're asking there, Ben, will this prevent people from going which route? There's a lot to talk about in terms of deployment. So if we're asking about like other ways to deploy, then we can definitely get into that.
Going to the new post creation route. Oh no, I don't think it will. So I think when we deploy this, y'all control the heck out of us.
Well, we're gonna set up an actual database that's gonna have an environmental variable that we're gonna link up to. So if we hide that, then they can't troll us.
Okay, so I'm going to GitHub repo create. Learn with JSON. I switched over to the actual GH CLI as opposed to Hub, and I'm still learning it, so I think this works. Let's find out.
Yeah, this is where the most
public
potential for error comes in when I'm doing stuff like this live.
Done. Okay, so now I can git push upstream origin main. Good. And that's the wrong tab. You're not helping. Here we go. All right, so this is the code that's up and running here. And now it configured for Netlify deployment, but it did not deploy to Netlify. Is that correct?
Correct. Now we need to actually go into our Netlify account and link the repo.
Okay, and so I can do that also from the command line.
I believe you probably have a Netlify account.
Yeah, so I'm gonna Netlify init, and we want to create and configure a new site. I'll put it on my team, and we'll call this Let's Learn Redwood JS.
I've never done this from the command line before. I always just go to their dashboard.
Okay, and now it's gonna get overridden by everything, but I'm just gonna go ahead and type that one in to make sure it doesn't explode on us. Okay, so now that we've got that, open in the right window. Oh, always the wrong window. Here, over here, this is the one. So now we've got our site building, but we're missing that database URL. So this is going to fail.
Yes. Well, it's not going to fail. It's going to generate our page, and it's going to give us an error because our cell knows how to do error handling.
Okay. All right. I'll take that.
So your front end is still going to work. It's just not going to render any posts.
Gotcha.
But what we want to do now is, do you have a Heroku account?
I do.
Yeah. So we'll create a Heroku and just provision a Postgres database on the free tier.
Okay. Let's see how quickly I can get into Heroku. Let me pull this off screen. Actually, I think I have it logged in over here. Yes, I do. So I'm just going to pull over this tab, and we're going to create a new app. Okay. And what do I need anything else here?
So now you're going to go to resources. This is all fine. You don't need to touch any of that.
Okay.
And then find more add-ons on the right.
Is it the Postgres here?
Postgres. Yeah, that's the one. Mm-hmm.
Free. So we can set this up on a free. Now the limitation with a free Postgres is like 10,000 records. So for a lot of folks, that'll be enough, depending on what you're planning to use this for. I know that because I just hit that limit on another account.
That's funny. Yeah, this is going along with this whole kind of like serverless idea, is that everything starts on the free tier, and it's only once you start hitting a certain limitation of usage do you actually start getting charged. And for anyone who's just like building these projects and is just trying to like learn this stuff or get things spun up, it's like you're never going to hit a limit. And then for people who are even building like companies with this, like it's just, if they architect it correctly, they can get a lot for like really, really cheap as well.
Mm-hmm. And now I need to pull some settings, right? So I'm going to do this off screen.
Yeah, you're going to want to grab the environmental variables. I don't think you don't have to actually go into this part. This is still going to be in your regular Heroku dashboard, not really your Postgres dashboard. And then it'll be under settings, I think.
Settings.
And then, so that's what you're going to want to take off screen. You're going to reveal your config variables, and then you're going to grab that and plug it into your environmental variables in Netlify.
Got it.
So name it.
Yeah, and this is the part that failed, right? It said, Oh, yeah, because we don't have, got it. All right. So then I'm going to come back here, go to my site settings, and then we'll pull up the environment variables. And then let's see, is my thingy working? It is. So I'm going to drop that in here.
Whoa,
and we'll
awesome.
go database URL, right? That was what we called that?
I believe so.
Yes. So I'm going to save that. And now we can just start it again.
It'll re-trigger the build.
All right. So that's basically done. So I'll come out here instead and let's trigger a new deploy.
And then once that's done, that should be it.
Okay.
You did everything correctly. You used to also have to set like the flavor of Linux that it was, because like Netlify had some like weird thing, or it was like Red Hat Linux or some other version of Linux, and that was fixed in the most recent version of Prisma, so you don't have to worry about that anymore, which is great, because like worrying about flavors of Linux is like the least Jamstack thing I could ever think of.
Yeah, and just to repeat this for anybody who is wondering how you would do this with Heroku. Once I created this database, if I click this button, it just gives me, there's an environment variable called database URL and then a value. I just copy pasted that value over to Netlify. That's all we need from Heroku is that step. We went to resources, we searched for Postgres here, got Heroku Postgres, went to settings, clicked this reveal config vares, and then we moved that over into our deploy settings on Netlify. So nice and slick. I'm into it. So I think what happened, we didn't wait for Netlify to finish the first build, so we didn't get the cache from that one for this one. So we're waiting for it fresh this time. So, time for coffee, I guess. Someone want to play some elevator music for us? Thank you, Nikki.
Guys, I make some jokes about the build logs in my blog post, where it's just like logs, like let the logs wash over you and through you.
Yeah, the environment variable masker is something that Sarah Drasner put together, because generally speaking, I find that when something is useful on the internet, Sarah Drasner had a hand in it. That tends to be like a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, that's great. So it's a Chrome extension?
It is, yeah, it's a Chrome extension. And Jimena posted a link to it, so let me grab that link.
Yeah, because that's something I run into doing live streams for sure. So that's like going to be very handy.
Yeah, but so this is
Sarah.
This is the tool. It's called Netlifymaster. You can search for it. I will include a link in the show notes as well. All right. So we got through. No errors this time. There's our build command.
I think it's still building.
It's working on our functions.
Yep.
And that hopefully will happen nice and fast.
Some of what we can kind of talk about as this is going on is like other ways to deploy this. So, some people know this, some people don't. Tom Preston Warner was like a very early investor in Netlify and has kind of been involved in this whole thing since the beginning. And now he's on the board, and like Redwood and Netlify, like they're very tightly integrated. Like Redwood was built with Netlify as the original deploy target in mind. But with that said, it's not meant to only work with Netlify. Like obviously lots of people talk about lock-in and like worries about this. And this is very much about like enabling the ecosystem to like build whatever we want. So you can deploy this on Vercel just as easily as we have here. So now see how it says empty, because it's not going to carry over. It blew away our old database because it was
SQLite.
Yeah. So now we're going to go back to our posts route in our deployed app and just create some new posts.
Okay. So here's chat where you're going to be able to troll us mightily. Let's see. This is a Redwood JS powered blog. Okay. Now remember, chat, keep it PG-13 or else I'm going to have to take away your fun.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I guess they can still troll us here. There is an authentication part.
What up, chat?
Nice. We skipped the authentication part.
Yes.
You use like Netlify identity, and you implement like a login form and authentication there.
Yeah.
So this would be the kind of final layer. This is the very last part of my multi-part blog series, is explaining the authentication layer. And you can also do like magic link. You can do Auth0 as it says there. You can do. If you go to the cookbooks on the left, there's a more complicated RBAC role-based authentication cookbook. So this is David T has done a lot of really fantastic work on this. So if you want to build out real, more sophisticated apps with authentication, like there's a lot of stuff in there for you.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, this is some pretty powerful stuff, right? Like there's a lot of potential here, a lot of things that we can build that are very cool and very powerful. And I love that this makes it so just quickly approachable, right? Like that's a lot of power. I also like turtles.
Wow. Fizz the buzz. It's good stuff.
I always appreciate your wholesomeness, chat. It's just good. I just like it. I like you guys. But yeah. Okay. So I'm into this. This is fun. So from here, I think this is probably as good a place as any to stop, because we can't go too much further without running out of time. So where should someone go if they want to take further steps? We've got a list. So we've got a link to your first look at RedwoodJS. We'll be on the lookout for your next version of that. We've got the tutorial. We've got your Twitter. So I'm going to make sure that everyone goes and follows you on Twitter.
I used to have it. It was Anthony Campolo with a lowercase a, like camel case, but I recently learned the term screaming snake case.
Screaming snake case. That is one of my favorites. Yeah. I actually did some Screaming Snake Case fan art. Hold on one second. I would find my on here.
From Syntax FM, they mentioned it like a week or two ago.
This is my Screaming Snake Case fan art that I did. But yeah, so we've got your Twitter. Where else should we go? Where's a good? Oh, sorry, you did a whole thing.
Is like where my writing really is. So it's linked on my Twitter, but it's the same handle, AJC Web Dev. It's all this. I got the same handle everywhere.
Okay, so dev.2/AJC Web Dev. Okay, so here is a collection of writing.
Yeah, and so you'll find 20 or so articles about like GraphQL and Redwood and all this kind of stuff. But I've written like stuff about Svelte, written stuff about Nuxt. I've written about the Cloudflare durable objects. I mean, all sorts of stuff.
Very, very cool. Well, yeah. So I mean, this is wonderful. Like, I feel like this is a good testament to the power of Redwood JS that we finished 15 minutes early. And we built a lot. We created a Postgres database. We hooked that up to a website. We configured Prisma to act as an ORM over our Postgres database to give us a TypeScript auto-completing like GraphQL API to use. We were able to stand up routing. We were able to get our pages configured. We were able to create blogs, so create a UI admin for creating our blog posts. We were able to pull those blog posts and write a custom display logic for it. And we were able to deploy all of that to Netlify. And like, that's a lot of work. That's a huge amount of stuff that we were able to accomplish in a very short window.
And I think the real testament is that it is hopefully understandable at every point along that journey, what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it fits into the larger picture. That was what really like got me so fired up about this, is that it made sense to me in a way that like learning all this other modern web development stuff wasn't clicking. Like I couldn't quite figure out how to fit the pieces together in a way that would like actually get the friggin' thing to just deploy and work. And so like getting to be brought along on this journey of this thing being built in a way where you're not just copy pasting stuff, like you actually understand what the code is doing. And, you know, people are going to hit different limitations in terms of that understanding, like based on how well they know things like GraphQL or GitHub or Netlify or the command line itself. So it's not set up for someone going totally from zero, but as someone starting almost from zero.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, you know, Redwood is not going to be everybody's speed, because it falls on a spectrum of letting decisions get made for you so that you can be quickly productive, or making all of your own decisions so that you have a deep rooted understanding of what's going on. And we all fall somewhere on that spectrum, you know, and Redwood is not by any means the most prescriptive option. It's just further on that spectrum than other choices out there. But what I think is really interesting about this is, you know, that it gets introduced on the spectrum depending on the project that you're going to do. You know, if I'm working with a team and that team is not a group that I've had a lot of time to like build a shared language of how we write code or how we think about data or anything like that, something like Redwood is a great way to immediately create shared language. We know that you're going to create cells to interact with data. We know that you're going to use the generate command to build new code. We know that the router is going to work like this. There are a lot of opinions that have already been established. It's sort of like having a really strong ESLint file. It's, you know, you're saying we've decided as a team that we're going to do things like this. And then you don't need a code cop to go in and police that, because the tools are making those decisions for you. That can create a lot of really good team unity. You know, if you're an individual, then it's just down to taste. Do I want to have to think about how this is constructed? Is that fun for me? Am I learning? Or am I trying to get something done and I just want to ship it really fast? And depending on, you know, where you land on the spectrum for today's given project, and I'll tell you, I land all across that spectrum depending on the day of the week and how busy I am. So, you know, and I can definitely see this being a really valuable tool when we just need to get something out the door, when we want something that we know is going to work, that we know has that error handling, that we know is built on tools that are going to function well together. That seems like this seems like a great starting place. So with that being said, do you have any parting words for the chat today?
Just like, thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a chance to like kind of, you know, talk about Redwood and why I'm like so passionate about it. And I really just enjoy like getting to introduce people to it. And it's really cool getting to introduce you to it, because like you're, you know, very experienced developer, you know how all this stuff works. So I figured that you would pick up all this stuff like pretty quickly. You know, it's like for someone like me who's kind of like learning it, like took me like maybe like a kind of month or two to make it all the way through this whole tutorial. And that's why I wrote the article series as I was going, you know. So the article series is basically me documenting my journey through doing the tutorial. And it was what I've been able to go back to now to really help me like continue to refine these things. Like I've been kind of like, you know, rerunning it. Like I said, I'm kind of redoing it and making it compatible with like the current version. Yeah. But I just recommend people check out the forums and check out the Discord. Like it's a really awesome community. Like I've had a ton of help from like the core team, and some of that actually isn't going to be like officially announced until Thursday, but I can give you like the scoop on is I'm being like invited onto the core team as like a core member now. Oh, cool. Congratulations. Yeah. And I just dropped a Discord link if you want to join the Discord. Yeah, geez, so that's very cool. And I saw that you're on the hunt for work, so, you know, somebody hire this guy.
But yeah, so with that being said, make sure that you, a little extra shout out for our captioning today, provided by Whitecoat Captioning. Thank you so much. That's made possible by the sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Sanity, Auth0, all of them kicking in some cash to cover the cost of captioning, which makes the show more accessible to more people, which I very much appreciate. Also, make sure you take a look at the schedule. We've got, Nate, you asked for View. I got View. We're not doing an episode this Thursday. This Thursday, I'm taking it a little easy during the holidays, right? So I'm not going to do an episode this Thursday, but we're back next Tuesday with Ben Hong. Ben Hong just joined my team at Netlify. He's also a core contributor on Vue. He is brilliant and funny, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to do an intro to Vue 3. I'm super pumped.
API?
We're actually going to do a whole separate episode in January about the composition API. So we're going to do 2 episodes.
Talk about the composition API for Vue NYC yesterday.
Oh, nice. Yeah. But so I'm super pumped about that. We've also got Emma Bastian coming back to the show. We are going to make fun of her taste in tacos, and I'm really looking forward to that. I've got a few more that are going to get added to the schedule soon, so keep your eyes peeled, but definitely mark your calendars. Remember, we have a Google Calendar that you can join that I think is here. Not there. Here? I don't know. Schedule?
Where
oh my God. Does anyone remember my... I forget what the command is to share the calendar. Whatever. We'll find it later.
Twitter command?
I don't know. It's a Twitch chat command that I've forgotten. But yeah, so I think we've got a calendar here. This is the calendar. So let me copy that link address. We are going to drop that in here. Thank you very much, the J Chaps, for finding that for me. And I think that's as good a place as any to call it done. So Anthony, thank you again for taking the time to hang out with me today and teach us all about Redwood. This was a lot of fun. Chat, thank you so much for hanging out. It is always a pleasure. I love that this is a wholesome chat that we can just leave an unsecured database open to and nobody does anything terrible. Stay tuned. We're going to raid and we will see you next time.